Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this not so lovely Monday afternoon. And the reason why I say not so lovely, at least for me, is because football happened yesterday. For all of you football fans out there that have been dying for football, the season finally just started. A lot of good teams were playing last night. They played very well. There were a lot of other teams that didn't play well. And hopefully you enjoyed football over the weekend. If you guys are interested in all the news and learning about what happened over the weekend in terms of football, we have college football podcasts, we have so many football podcasts, and we have a sports podcast that's also going to cover football and the events going on in football. So, there's plenty of different options and plenty of different opinions that you can choose from and you can hear from if any of you guys are interested. Now, personally, as a Giants fan, I am sad, I am depressed, and the season is already over. So, yeah, that's how I'm feeling with the NFL right now. But let's talk about basketball. So, the first segment is going to be about Angel Reese's surprising season-ending injury. Very surprising. I did not expect her to get injured this season, let alone end the season like that. And then in the second segment, we're going to do a quick follow-up on Shaq and Rudy Gobert. You know how Shaq just doesn't like Rudy Gobert because Rudy ended up responding to Shaq, and now there's actually a former coach responding to Shaq's comments as well. So we're just going to go ahead and look at what each side had to say. Then in the third segment, I'm going to talk about the biggest questions for each and every single ranked team in college basketball, since college basketball is about to come around the corner. Again, it's not starting now, obviously, but it's coming up, so I might as well go ahead and do that. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to talk about some NBA rumors, and the biggest one going around is that the Lakers offered C.D. Osman an invite to training camp, and we're just going to go ahead and look at the validity of that news and just, the rumors surrounding it. Before I begin the first segment, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you have a hot take or a burning question. We're all ears. And just to make sure that your comment or question gets noticed, you can go ahead and use Super Chat. Click the link displayed below use Super Chat. It'll send in your chat message that way. Really helps the show. And it's guaranteed to get featured on the show. And what I wanted to say is if Super Chat isn't your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker and watch your shows and send in your comments that way. And without further ado, let's continue on into the first segment, which is talking about Angel Reese and her surprising season-ending injury. This essentially, this came out of the blue over the weekend. I wasn't expecting to cover this. I wasn't expecting for Angel's season to be cut short right towards the end, especially with the streak of which she's the streak that she's on in the WNBA. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and pull out her statement, because she did release I believe she released a statement on social media talking about her injury. So I'm just going to go and try and find it. There we go. All right, Angel posted, "What a year. I never would have imagined that," hold on just one second. There we go. "I never would have imagined the last bucket of my rookie season would be a 3. But maybe that was God. And maybe that was God saying, give them a taste of what they will be seeing more in year 2. Through it all, I have showed that I belong in this league, even when no one else believed. All I have ever wanted was to come into the W and make an impact. I can confidently say I have done that and will strive to keep doing so. I'm filled with emotions right now that I have a season-ending injury, but also filled with so much gratitude for what is next. Although this is God's timing and not mine, I'm finally able to give myself a physical and mental break. God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. You'll still see me being the biggest cheerleader on the sideline and unrivaled league. See you soon." and that was her post, and that's what she had to say. And really, like, again, super surprising that she even tweeted this out. Incredibly surprising. But this is arguably now if Caitlyn didn't exist, she would arguably have been known as the greatest rookie in WNBA history. Again, only if Caitlyn didn't exist. And she recorded 26 double-doubles in 34 games, the second most in a single season by a player in league history. She posted 15 consecutive double-doubles earlier in the season, setting a new WNBA record. She also set a new WNBA record for most single-season rebounds. She ended the year with 446. She was named the WNBA Player of the Week in Week 7, the WNBA Rookie of the Month in June, and arguably had one of the best rookie campaigns that any WNBA rookie has seen, again, aside from Caitlin Clark. The fact that both of these two are in the exact same draft class is just incredible. And it's sort of unfair for Angel, I guess you could say, because, now there's so much, yes, she is breaking records, but Caitlin is also breaking records. So trying to, split the greatness between the two, it's not entirely easy, and it's a parallel to maybe even something like Steph or LeBron. I don't think it's that much of a parallel to Steph or LeBron, but a lot of people want to do that. I think it's more of a parallel to Magic and Larry, just because of the connotations and the way that arguments ensue amongst them, and because Magic and Larry were essentially like the first. Aside from Kareem, this was like the first two head-to-head big rivalries that the league has seen when the league was first starting to modernize and advance. I guess you could say it's one of the more popular ones. Like back in the day, you could argue that Bill and Wilt were the two best in the league, and they were the ones going head-to-head with each other. And then obviously, once the 70s came around, then it was more Kareem just dominating most of the league. And then but in that period of the 70s, there wasn't really, I can't really name many big time sort of rival. Maybe Kareem and Wilt, because Wilt does have that longevity. But Magic and Larry were like the big two players that would go head to head. And in the 90s as well, there wasn't really much, head-to-head action going on. There was no big rivalry. The only rivalry, I guess you could say back then, was like the league going up against Michael Jordan. Like that was the rivalry. Everyone else against Michael Jordan in the time, because there wasn't really like a big rivalry story like it's like Boston Lakers at the time, or like Caitlyn versus Angel right now. But to continue on with Angel and her stats, she averaged 13, 13, and 1, along with 1 steal per game, and to end her season. And so the Chicago Sky have 6 more games remaining in the WNBA season, and last time I checked their power rankings, they were ranked second to last. So it doesn't really look like that Chicago was going to even make the playoffs to begin with or without Angel. But aside from that, still a fantastic rookie campaign coming in from Angel Reese. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of Angel Reese's performance and what you guys think of the future of the WNBA. Are you guys looking forward to it? Or are you guys just sort of like sitting back, relaxing, and waiting for some more drama? Because I'm personally looking forward to next season, because not only are we going to probably see Caitlyn play even better than what we've seen her play now, but we're also going to get Cameron Brink. We saw a little bit of what Cameron Brink can do for the Sparks, but we haven't seen it all. So I'm very interested to see in how Cameron Brink can impact the Sparks, and maybe she can impact the Sparks in an even better way than Angel Reese is impacting the Sky. I really wouldn't be surprised, because I was a big fan of hers when she was on UConn and when she was balling for the UConn team, because while yes, we do have a basketball team, we're just awful and we never make it to the NCAA tournament, and the only other Connecticut team, the team closest to me is UConn. So, and there are actually times where I like go to some of the their events. Like I go to some of their basketball games there too, and it's really really fun because it's a lot closer than what you would expect. It's really expensive too, but still really fun. And aside from that, I mean, that's one of like the biggest expectations that I have going into next season. And who knows, maybe Angel is going to just like break the WNBA rebound record again. Do you guys think she could do that? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If she could break the WNBA record again, she most definitely can, considering how she already broke the record and now she's injured and there's still 5 games that she hasn't played. Like she's gonna break this record again, and it's probably going to be held as her own, at least until somebody else in the future of the WNBA comes along and is just better than her. It's totally possible with how this league is advancing now. And again, not trying to discredit her because, like, yes, what she did is incredibly difficult, but the league and the WNBA, the players around the WNBA are getting better. Like, they're catching up. They're getting much better. They're getting much more entertaining to watch, and they know how to hoop. They're starting to know how to hoop. Now, obviously, they knew how to do it before, but like I say before, Angel, not Angel, but Caitlyn has moved, and same thing with Juju, that college girl on USC. She can handle the ball, and like she moves so different. I've never seen a WNBA athlete handle the ball like that, and it's really crazy. Like, again, that's just my opinion because it's with my eyes, and therefore I could say that. So if any of you guys have differing opinions, that's on you. But aside from that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment where I do a follow-up on Shaq's comments towards Rudy Gobert. Because if you guys remember from one of the previous podcasts that I mentioned, Shaq ended up calling out Rudy Gobert on a podcast saying that he is flat out the worst player in the NBA. And Rudy ended up responding to that, and now another coach ends up responding to that. So there is a little bit of drama around that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, I'm going to do a follow-up segment on Shaq's comments about Rudy Gobert, because now there's like a little bit of internet drama going around between the two. There was like over the weekend last week, and I just couldn't cover it, obviously. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear from what you guys have to say during our show, whether it is a burning question, hot take for the game, something you've been dying to say. We're all ears. Drop your thoughts in the chat, and if you really want your chat or comment to get mentioned, then go ahead and use Super Chat. You just click the $ below and send your comment donation that way, and your comment will be guaranteed to feature on the show next time. And if Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can always go ahead and use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment and do it that way. And we're so grateful for each and every one of you guys who join us. So don't forget to tip, don't forget to donate. And again, if you want your comments to get recognized, then don't forget to use the link or use Super Chat. Now, with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and continue with this second segment talking about Rudy Gobert and Shaq and the overall beef between the two. Now, for those of you guys who didn't tune into the previous podcast where I covered this, Shaq on a podcast, he was invited on a podcast for himself, and he was asked, who is the worst player in the NBA? And without hesitation, Shaq pointed at him. Now, Ben Simmons caught a stray in there, which I 100% agree with Shaq on that. Ben Simmons should catch a stray in that and should definitely be in consideration for one of the worst NBA players. But Rudy, not so much. And obviously, a lot of fans were just quick to say that Shaq is just being a hater. And a lot of people know that Shaq doesn't really have much of a fondness for Rudy Gobert, mainly because of the huge contract that Rudy Gobert has signed in previous years. I remember when he was on Utah, he signed a huge contract that made it the most expensive contract that any center has signed at the time. And Shaq just was appalled and couldn't believe that he's making that much money without having much of an offensive game. Because Rudy Gobert's value, you get Rudy Gobert and you want Rudy Gobert on your team because of his defense. You don't want him because of his offense. You want him because of his defense. And the fact that he's making more money than he was making more money than any NBA center, it really begged the question, was his defense that valuable? Was it really that much of a game changer? And is his defense enough to justify being paid that sum of money? That was the big questions, and Shaq, of course, felt like it wasn't, because when you're from Shaq's point of view, obviously you're going to feel like a player that isn't as good as you shouldn't be making more money than you. That's not only is it a logical thing, it's I believe it might be a pride thing for Shaq. It might be something that he holds dearly. He might take it personally if somebody is willing to pay another player more money if he knows that he's better than that other player. And so it might rub him the wrong way in this. But essentially, despite the fact whether it rubs him the wrong way or not, Rudy Gobert ended up responding to Shaq on a tweet. And I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can pull up the comment on X or on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. And it says, Rudy Gobert said, quote, "It is sad to see someone that has accomplished as much as you did, Shaq, both in sport and business, still be triggered by another man's finances and accomplishments. I get the entertainment part, but unlike other folks, you need that stuff to stay relevant." That is the exact tweet that he commented on Legion of Hoops post on X, formerly known as Twitter, talking about the podcast on September 5th, 2024. So if you guys want to go ahead and check it, if the tweet is still up there, I believe, because I'm looking at it from an article, then you can go right ahead and see it from there. And obviously, Rudy Gobert doesn't think that, thinks that Shaq is just being a hater and saying that it's sad because, legitimately, Rudy Gobert, he does somewhat have a point, because why are you going to be so fixated on one specific player? Why are you going to have that one player live rent-free in your head, for lack of a better term? And when you yourself have accomplished so much more, he should be an afterthought to you, right? Shaq in the NBA pyramid, in the NBA landscape, history of the NBA landscape, he's up here in terms of history. He was part of the last three-peat that the NBA has seen. He is up here in history. And Rudy Gobert, towards the end of his career, is probably going to be all the way down here. Now, maybe he'll be up here because, the Defensive Player of the Year awards, people are going to remember him for that. But in terms of overall hierarchy, especially in his position, he's not going to be remembered as much of a force aside for it being on the defensive end. Shaq is going to be remembered as the better center. And on top of that, the rings, the finals MVPs, they all prove that case true. So the fact that Shaq is just wasting his time on this is something that Rudy Gobert doesn't really understand, because it seems like Shaq is just picking on him, you know? And a coach, a former NBA coach, actually comes out to defend Rudy Gobert after he faced a lot of criticism recently. So let me just go ahead and continue reading this article. So Jackson spent 12 years in the NBA, and he thinks Gobert should have advanced in other areas of his game by now, but he also feels that much of the criticism is unjustified. He further pointed out that how the game is played has changed, and the bigs haven't liked this development. So this is Jaren Jackson. This is Jaren Jackson Jr.'s. And this is Jaren Jackson Jr. and his comments. Jackson said, "I feel for him. He's another one that plays defense. He's not the prettiest. It's not the prettiest part of the game. It's not the most entertaining. Not going to be on ESPN about his blocks. All of these big guys today, the game has changed. You no longer just sit in the paint. Now these guys got to move." He added, "I think Rudy is just trying to be the best help side defender he can be. He's just not appreciated. There are other areas of his game he probably needs to be better at. As a veteran player, he should be better at other areas of his game, but he's found his niche to play defense. I don't care what people say about him." This is what this is what, was it senior or junior that said this? Hold on. I'm trying to make sure. But I do know that it was Jaren Jackson Sr. who said this. And Rudy Gobert could have had the best season of his career, but it all went in vain after they failed to qualify for the NBA Finals. And that really would have probably shut a lot of criticism about him. But yeah, this is Jaren Jackson Sr. I want to add. Pardon me. The article for some reason says it's junior, and I guess the article is just wrong. And but aside from that, no, it is Jaren Jackson Sr., so the father of Jaren Jackson Jr. and a former coach. But he believes that Jaren Jackson Sr. believes that Rudy Gobert has found his sort of role on the team, and all he's trying to do is play that role to perfection. And yes, I understand, playing a role to perfection. It's what made Dennis Rodman so great. It's what made all these other role players known as being fantastic role players. It's what made Draymond so great as well. It's just the difference is, I guess you could say, well, at least right now, is that those role players, they won championships because they did their role to perfection. Rudy Gobert isn't winning championships by playing his role to perfection. So if you're able to play your role to perfection, but you can't win championships doing that, what's the point? And I guess that's sort of why Jaren Jackson Sr. feels like Rudy should have advanced a little bit more on his game. And the article continues, is Rudy Gobert really that bad? Because people are actually considering listening to Shaq and believing that Rudy is actually that bad. But regretfully, Gobert's excellent play throughout the first two postseason rounds was overshadowed by his struggles trying to guard Luka Doncic during the Western Conference Finals. Because of that series, he got a lot of hate because Luka Doncic ended up hitting the game-winning shot over Rudy Gobert, making him look silly. And Derek Lively II, a big man with the Dallas Mavericks, aimed Gobert for his play during the Western Conference Finals. In Lively's opinion, the Minnesota Timberwolves should not have used him as much as they did in this specific game. And that brings in another question. If teams can't even use you during a game, if teams can't use you and play you 48 minutes in every single minute of the game, what is the purpose of you making all of that money? This is the same thing happened with the French national team. The French national team, when they were going up against, excuse me, I believe it was Germany going into the gold medal game, they ended up sitting Rudy Gobert for a majority of the game, and because they couldn't utilize him. So if you can't utilize a player, what is the purpose of having him make that much money? Does that make sense? And I to that I see Shaquille O'Neal's argument, and I see why he isn't particularly fond of Rudy Gobert and things of that nature regarding his finances. And even though there were some harsh remarks, Shaq had the harshest of remarks, and saying that he is the worst player. So that's just flat out wrong, because I'm sure, like, obviously because Ben Simmons still exists, but also because there are so many other players in the NBA that don't play. You can't put Rudy Gobert in that conversation of being one of the worst. It's just, at that point, it's just hating. Like, I'm sorry, I have to say what it is. That's just hating. For Defensive Player of the Year awards, like, you can't really, yes, he is a liability here and there, but you can't say that he is the worst player ever in the NBA. Like, you just can't. It's just not happening. And, well, it's not that it's not happening. It's just not right. So, aside from that, that's all that I have to say about this second segment. Let me know in the comments what you think about this little feud between Shaq and Rudy Gobert. Which side are you on? Are you on Shaq's side? Are you on Rudy Gobert's side? Or are you like in the middle and sort of agree with both of their sides and just think it's unnecessary drama? Let me know in the comments what you think. But in the third segment, we're going to move on to the third segment, and I'm going to talk about the biggest questions for each and every single ranked college basketball team going into this NCAA season. So for any of you guys who are interested in what I have to say about that, you can go ahead and tune in right after the short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the biggest question for each and every single ranked team in the NCAA right now, and just, the biggest questions for each and every single one of these teams. And I'm just going to go over all of this. Again, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and let me know if you guys have anything to say, if you guys have any expectations for this college team, if you guys actually would want more college content on this podcast. Go ahead and let me know in the comments as well. And instead of starting with number one, because I usually start with number one and I go down on the list, I actually want to start with my home team, like the team that plays in my home state, New Jersey, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So last year, Rutgers was ranked 25th. I know it's really last, and it's dead last in top 25, but it doesn't matter because they're top 25, and you have to win games in order to rank higher. So I have a feeling that they could really, I hope they could do that for this season. But yeah, if I was for NCAA, now aside from my own college, assuming my college actually makes it to the NCAA tournament, I'm going to be rooting for the Scarlet Knights big time, especially when they go up against a bunch of Big Ten opponents in their division. Now, the biggest question for Rutgers in this season is Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Are they ready to carry the mantle for Rutgers? That is the ultimate question. This is going to be the most anticipated season in Rutgers men's basketball history. They're bringing in Harper and Bailey. They're two of the top 3 picks in ESPN's most recent 2025 NBA mock draft. And Steve Pickle is going to rely on both of them heavily in the first game of the season. He's surrounded them with veteran transfers, but Rutgers' success this season is going to be determined by how quickly those 2 freshmen can actually produce. And yes, they are true freshmen, so there is a lot of pressure on them going into this, but that is going to be the question for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So aside from Rutgers. Let's continue on with this list and start right back all the way to the top at number 1. And now, if we do run out of time for this segment, I'll continue this segment in the next podcast, because I do have another segment lined up that I actually do want to cover. Or maybe if I do have more time in that next segment, I'll continue on with my list of the biggest questions for each college team, if you guys are interested. So first, we're going to go right ahead and talk about Kansas. They were ranked number 1 last year. And the biggest question for Kansas, the Jayhawks, is can Bill Self really, can he find that perimeter combination on the roster? Riley Kugel, he decommitted, and the backcourt rotation has sort of opened up for Kansas Jayhawks in this season. And they also were able to add A.J. Storr, who's an elite transfer, Rylan Griffin, a really good shooter, and Zeke Mayo, and a veteran high major starter, Shaquille Moore, to add along with the returning starter, Dejon Harris Jr. So we're just going to see how the starting lineup fares with that. But that's really their biggest question, if they could find the right perimeter combination for this season. Next, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I really would never have expected Alabama to be ranked in both basketball and in football, like so high in both of the NCAA rankings, which is insane. So Alabama's ranked second. They were previously ranked second. So the big question is Alabama going to be as effective offensively despite having a much bigger lineup now? And by bigger, I mean in terms of height. So late in the season, Grant Nelson and Jaren Stevenson, they're 2 big men that they acquired, but they can also stretch the floor. And this season, Rutgers transfer Clifford Amori, forgive me if I botched that name, is going to anchor in the post. So the big question is, one of the things that Alabama was really good at last year was their offense and their pacing. So having a super big lineup is going to slow down your pacing. So that's really going to be the big question. Is Alabama still going to be as high-powered on the offensive side of the ball as they were last year? So next team is the UConn Huskies. They were ranked 3rd. They ended up winning the NCAA tournament. They became the first team to win back-to-back in a very long time. So the big question for this, aside from, can they win it again, is can Hassan Diarra make the step up to the starting lineup? So in addition to the NBA talent that the Huskies have produced in the past couple of years, Dan Hurley has also had one of the best bench guards in the country in Diarra. So last season's Big East Sixth Man of the Year award, he won the Sixth Man of the Year award, and now the question is, can he move into that starting lineup? And he averaged 6 points per game last season as a 6-man, so imagine how much he could average as the number 1 option. Well, not really the number 1 option, but as a starter for the team. Next team that was ranked 4th was the Houston Cougars. Now, the big question for Houston is, can Kelvin Sampson replace Jamal Sheed for this season? And the reason why I say this is because Sheed turned into one of the nation's best perimeter point guards, and during his time with the Cougars, he was able to combine his elite defensive ability with his really good playmaking, and his playmaking came up clutch in a couple of their games. So that's really going to be the biggest question that the Houston Cougars have for the season. Next, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They were ranked 5th last year. So will Gonzaga be the better defensive team without its best defender? That's really going to be the big question. So Gonzaga's second half turnaround last season was very, very impressive, but the Zags will most likely need to be a little bit more consistent at stopping and protecting the ball at the rim. And one big addition to their team is transfer Emmanuel Anosenti. Forgive me if I botched that name. And he's an elite defender who could probably help on that end of the floor, but, questions still remain to be seen. And also, it should be noted that this is sort of pulled from an ESPN article for those of you guys who are curious where I'm getting all of these questions from and where I'm getting the rankings and the rosters and all of this stuff. But I do agree with these questions. I do think they're valid, especially the one with UConn and the Huskies, because winning an NCAA championship isn't really as guaranteed as winning an NBA championship. Like going back to back, it's not really as common. So I don't really think the big question should be on whether or not they go back to back. Like the success of the UConn Huskies program isn't dependent on whether or not they go back to back. So that's not really like, the way I see it, that's not really like, the big question for a team, if whether or not they can go back to back, because it would be rather unfair. Like NCAA teams in basketball, it's very difficult to go back to back. So I don't really hold that to any sort of college team standards. Now, professionals, that's a different story. So next, and honestly, maybe the last team on the list before I go into the next segment, because we are running out of time, is the Baylor Bears. They were ranked 6th in They were ranked 6th in the nation last year. So the question for them is there enough? Is their roster finally enough to actually win? So Baylor is as loaded as any team in the country on the perimeter. And they were able to get Duke transfer Jeremy Roach, an elite recruit, VJ Edgecombe, forgive me if I botched their names, and also Jaden Nunn is returning. Langston Love is also returning. They have this Miami transfer, Nochad Omeyer, forgive me if I botched that last name. They should anchor the team down low, but Scott Drew doesn't really have a ton behind him besides Josh Ojinawa. Forgive me if I completely botched that name. And they might have to focus on playing small ball, which is a little bit risky going into college, because it's not the same game as the NBA. You can't really go into college and go into a small ball lineup like how you would in the NBA and expect it to work 100% of the time. So aside from that, I might continue on with this segment in the 4th segment if we do have some more time, and I might make a follow-up segment with this as well. So if you guys are still interested in what's there to be said about each and every single one of the college basketball ranked teams, then go ahead and tune in and let me know. But aside from that, we are out of time for this third break. So now we are out of time for this third segment, excuse me. So now we'll go ahead and go into a third break and into the 4th segment where I talk about some NBA rumors. The biggest NBA rumor now is that the Lakers offered C.D. Osman an invite to camp. And I'm just going to talk about, the rumors surrounding that, because it's a doozy. Let's just say that. So I'll be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that longer than normal break. I didn't mean to do that. I got some notifications on my phone that that were kind of urgent, and I needed to see. It was regarding class, so I had to just take a little bit of a break and go ahead and look at that. So I apologize for that little break. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment, which is talking about NBA rumors. And the big one right now is that the Lakers, it was said that they offered C.D. Osman an invite to camp. Reports have surfaced around that they were extending a training camp invitation to free agent C.D. Osman. However, it's later, with the new news that's been sort of revealed today, it's been shown that those reports were false and maybe a little bit untrue. So, and the reason why I say this is because he just recently signed with Greece. So, and on top of that, according to Mark Stein, he says that those reports aren't true. He claims that those reports that the Lakers inviting this man to training camp are completely untrue. So the quote is, "It has been reported in Europe that Turkish swingman C.D. Osman turned down a training camp invite from the Lakers before signing with Panathinaikos, forgive me if I botched that name, in Greece. But sources close to the situation told Stein Line that no such offer was extended by Los Angeles, despite LeBron James's well-known fondness for Osman dating back to his days on being Cavaliers teammates." So Stein also added, the Lakers don't really have any money to add a veteran free agent. So Osman coming to camp wouldn't make sense. Or he adds sense, and he says S-E-N-S-E sense, and then he says C-E-N-T-S. It's a pun on words, so hardy. But aside from that, sources say that the 29-year-old who played in San Antonio last season signed a one-year deal with Panathinaikos. Forgive me if I botched that name. In hopes that he can play his way back into the NBA next season. So Osman is 6'7", appeared in 72 games for the San Antonio Spurs last season, averaged 6 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, shot 47% from the field, and before that, he spent 6 years with the Cleveland Cavaliers, averaging no less than 10 points from 2018 to 2022. He was originally selected by the Timberwolves in the second round as the 31st overall pick in 2025, and then he was immediately traded to the Cavs. And he remained overseas for his first 2 professional seasons with the Turkish club Anadolu Efes before joining Cleveland in July 2017. He signed an extension with the Cavs 2 years later, then was part of a 3-team trade with the Spurs and Miami Heat last offseason. And that deal sent Osman and forward Lamar Stevens and a 2030 second rounder to San Antonio, and a 2026 second rounder to Miami, and guard Max Strus to Cleveland. So Osman appeared in 476 regular season games during his 7-year career, and he averaged 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in all of those games. So the Lakers, coming off of a 47-35 season in which they lost in the first round of the postseason, they remain one of the 3 teams that have not signed an outside free agent to the standard contract, and they joined the Cavs and the Boston Celtics. So, excuse me. So the Celtics, they don't have to worry about getting free agents. They already have a championship roster. The Cavs, however, they're kind of trying to figure out if they can make this roster work. So running it back with the season that they had last season is not that bad. The Lakers, however, running it back with the season that they had is pretty bad. And that's all that this argument has to say about this little situation. And in my opinion, I mean, obviously the Lakers, they need help badly. But is C.D. Osman going to be that role player that's going to produce? I'm not entirely sure. I have a feeling that he's just going to be he's going to get hyped up, sure. But then once he actually starts playing, the hype is going to start dying down from the Lakers, and people are going to eventually start not liking him. It's a cycle that happens to a lot of these players that play with LeBron. And I don't know why it happens. Maybe it's because of pressure. Maybe it's some other outside factor that it has to deal with. But I don't know why. It always happens like this. And really, I find it pretty baffling that these reports on him, how should I say, on the Lakers offering him an invite to training camp, I'm very surprised that they ended up being false. And I mean, I understand that why the Lakers wouldn't be able to pursue him, but why fabricate these rumors about extensions in training camp if that's not happening, if you're just not gonna do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now, which side of the report is true, which side of the report is untrue, that still remains to be seen. This is just, Mark Stein from the Stein line. This is what he says. He says that those reports aren't true. And, it's more like a he said, she said thing. So it's like, which source to really trust is not, you don't know. And there's no real way to know for sure. So I'm not really trying to say that, oh, the Lakers did this, the Lakers did that. But if it is false, like, if it is fabricated, why? Like, I guess that's really the big question. Why even bother fabricating something if there's not even like a chance, Is it just to make the fans happy? Is it just to try and see that, or is it just to show the Lakers fans, oh, hey, we aren't just, doing nothing in this free agency. We're actually trying to get better. We're actually trying to make a championship squad. We're trying to make a team, Like, is it really, it's meaningless. Really, I that's what I think. Like, it's unnecessary because, again, why hype it up? And why do this? Why say this? Why report this? Why report that? If it's ultimately going to fall short, and why even say you're going to pursue if it's going to fall short? If you don't have the cap space, if you don't have enough money for it, like, I would much rather they come straightforward, as opposed to fabricating these kind of things. Again, if it's even fabricated, because we don't know if it is fabricated. This is just what Stein is saying. Now, if it is true, and these agreements ultimately ended up falling short after the training camp. Like, let's say he did attend training camp, and he ended up just deciding, okay, I'm gonna go sign with the Greek team. Then that would be an even worse look for the Lakers, because it's like he doesn't even want to. He wants to return to the NBA, but not for the Lakers, which is like a big slap to the face to the entire organization, if that were to be the case. Again, I have no idea which side of the story is true. I'm just giving my thoughts. Let me know what side of the story do you think is true. Do you think the Lakers actually tried to pursue Osman and it just didn't work out? Or do you think that the news of the Lakers pursuing Osman just ended up being false? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But aside from that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now, as I alluded to in the previous segment, I'm going to be going into the fifth segment, where I talk about a player who I feel like didn't deserve to win the MVP. Now, we left off at Bill Russell last time, and I said before on the previous podcast that Bill Russell won 4 MVPs in the span of 5 years, where I think he shouldn't have won an MVP. And in this next fifth segment, I'm going to go over the next 3 years, considering how in every single one of those years, it's Bill Russell just winning the award over somebody else. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in the fifth segment. If you guys are interested, go ahead and tune in, and I'll be right back after this short break. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, I'm going to be talking about Bill Russell and how I feel he did not deserve 4 MVPs of which he won. Now, I went over one of those MVPs in a previous segment, so if you guys are interested in listening to what I had to say about that, then you can go ahead and click on that video. It's on this channel as well. He won that MVP in 1965 over Oscar Robertson. And this is just, and I said in that podcast that Bill Russell won 3 more MVPs, which I felt like he shouldn't have deserved. And I'm just going to go, this is just a segment going over that list of all the MVPs that I feel like he just didn't really deserve. Now, before I go into this segment, I do like to remind everybody that the voting in, like, the MVP voting at this time was very, very different. The players voted for the MVP as opposed to, like, the media and analysts and things like that. The voting was way different back then than it was here, which is why the result of these MVPs ended up turning out the way they turned out. So for any of you guys that are like, that would be confused, what were the voters thinking? What were the voters like? How could they come to this conclusion? It was because of the players. And, this is just, a disclosure before I go into this little debate, because you'll see, like, the numbers and, like, the difference between, like, these MVPs is staggering. Like, you guys are going to be amazed. So, I said before, like, it was 1965, right? So, I might as well go ahead and go. We'll skip it. We won't do, like, from the same order that I'd done before, so I won't start at 1963. Since the winner is still Bill Russell, I might as well go ahead and start with the first MVP that he won that I felt like he shouldn't have deserved, which was his MVP in 1961, where he won the MVP over Wilt Chamberlain. So the only reason that I think Bill Russell ended up winning the MVP over Wilt this season was due to team record. Because while he was a phenomenal defender and his numbers were good, he lacked way behind a lot of his other peers offensively. And one of the most popular players that he lacked behind offensively played the same position that he played in, Wilt Chamberlain. And when you look at the numbers, Wilt by far had the better individual stats, averaging 38, 27, and 1. Meanwhile, Bill averaged 16, 23, and 3. Now, Bill Russell's numbers are fantastic, but again, they just completely pale in comparison of Wilt Chamberlain's averages, and Wilt averages better everything aside from assists. And you can make the argument that the reason why Bill averaged more assists was because Bill was on the better team, because the Celtics players and the Celtics roster was loaded with Hall of Fame level talent. So it makes total sense how he was able to average and even then, it's not even like a major difference in assists. It's just a tiny, tiny little bit. But aside from that, the only real reason is because of team record. Again, the Wilt ended up going 46 and 33 this season, which isn't bad, but it was way worse than Bill Russell's team record, who was the best in the NBA. And obviously, like, the best in the NBA, like, that's value, and I understand why some players would consider that value. But remember, one of the rules was that you couldn't vote for yourself or your teammates. So a lot of people, most likely, at least from my point of view, at least the way I'm thinking about it, I believe that most players ended up being lazy and just voted for the best player on the best team or the biggest name on the best team. Right? Like, that's sort of the only thing that can make legitimate sense, because a player who averages 38, 27, and 1 on 50% shooting on better everything, while at the same time having a winning record, should win the MVP. In this year, he would win the MVP, without a question. So, next season, now if you thought 1961 was flat out wrong, 1962 is a crime in of itself. So, it wasn't just Wilt that got robbed of the MVP this season. It was numerous players that you could argue had a better season than Bill Russell in this season when he won the MVP. This is considered one of the most infamous MVPs in NBA history because of how many players were robbed of this MVP. Like, a lot of players were playing, like, this is a very, very solid year in basketball in the early games. So, for starters, Wilt averaged 50 points, yes, 50 points, and didn't win the MVP, along with 26 rebounds, while also having the best advanced stats in the league. And as I said before, there were other players that deserved this MVP award over Bill Russell. Oscar Robertson, he averaged a 30-point triple-double on crazy efficiency, the first and one of two players to ever do that. Elgin Baylor is another player that played really good. He averaged 38, 19, and 5 while serving in the military, which doesn't get talked about enough. And then Jerry West averaged 31, 8, and 5. So Bill Russell averaged 19, 24, and 5. Again, they're really, really good numbers, yes. But they pale in comparison on the offensive side of the ball when you look at everyone else and what everyone else is averaging. I mean, 50 points? And yes, they are good numbers. Bill Russell, his numbers aren't bad. That's not what I'm saying. But listen to every other stat line that I just said and tell me which one of them you think deserves to win the MVP. Obviously, it's going to be Wilt. But the Celtics ended the season 60-20 this season. So that's the biggest reason why Bill Russell, at least the way I see it, Bill Russell ended up winning the MVP. Now, if I were to give it to anyone, I would have given it to Elgin Baylor just because of the fact that he served in the military. That is the most valuable player right there, defending our nation. Yes, sir. But legitimately, if I was just talking about basketball, yes, it should be Wilt Chamberlain that won this award. And the last MVP that I'm going to talk about that I don't feel like he deserved was 1963. Yes, for 3 straight years, Bill Russell ended up winning an MVP when he shouldn't have. And he averaged 17, 24, and 5 this season, which is good. But again, Elgin Baylor just was much better this season, averaging 34 points per game, 14 rebounds, along with 5 assists as well. So he's averaging roughly 20 more points than Bill Russell, and he's just averaging 10 less rebounds than Bill Russell, and we're acting like 14 rebounds isn't a lot of rebounds. Now, yes, 24 is ridiculous, yes. But Elgin Baylor did end the season with a lot better efficiency than Bill Russell, despite the fact that Bill Russell played center. And Elgin Baylor, he didn't play center, and he was a much smaller player than Bill Russell, but he was still shooting better and was still much more efficient. And to top it all off, the Lakers this season, they only lost 5 more games than the Boston Celtics. So I don't think, so any sort of argument that any Bill Russell fans want to make about like defense, intangibles, or any other advanced stat that wasn't recorded at the time, because blocks weren't recorded, steals weren't recorded at the time either, I don't care about any of that, because not only was the difference in record not that much, but the Celtics roster was also stacked with future Hall of Famers. Like, practically everybody on the roster is a Hall of Famer. And obviously, like, the Celtics are going to have the best record when they have somebody like Bill Russell on top of several other Hall of Famers on the roster. And the fact that Bill Russell had a good team producing these numbers should definitely like take into consideration of this, like into the voting. And Elgin, he just averaged even better numbers, clearly the best player on his team at the time. And really, that's just my opinion on Bill Russell and his MVPs. Again, a lot of the MVPs that he won were due to a difference in team record, and maybe it wasn't the best idea having players vote for the MVP as opposed to having analysts and other people like that vote for the MVP. But again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Would you like to see the players vote for the MVP of the season? Because honestly, the way I see it, if players vote for the MVP, we might see LeBron. And that might trigger a lot of you LeBron haters. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Would you rather see NBA players vote for the MVP, or would you rather keep the MVP formatting the way that it is? Because I already showed you what happens when players vote for the MVP. as opposed to analysts and things like that. At least my opinion. At least that's why I think the Bill Russell ended up winning these MVPs, because of the player voting. Because there's no way that any of the players that I just mentioned should have not won the MVP that year. But let me know in the comments, do you think that Bill Russell's MVPs were deserved? Do you think that he robbed several players? Do you think that how should I say this? Do you think that maybe there was some other player that I forgot to mention that deserved an MVP in a specific year? Or would you rather not worry about the 60s and want to talk about something else? Aside from that, let me know in the comments. But that is all that I have on that's all that I have on the fifth segment, as well as all that I have on NBA players who I feel like didn't deserve to win an MVP. So who knows? Maybe my next special fifth segment is going to be something like NBA players who didn't deserve a Finals MVP. That actually might be a pretty good one now that I think about it. Or players that deserved a Finals MVP. That could be a pretty good segment. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you guys would like to for me to do that segment, like players who shouldn't have won a Finals MVP, or players that should have won a Finals MVP, or something like that. Let me know in the comments what you guys would like to see. But aside from that, we are out of time for this fifth segment, and that is all that I have for the show. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link displayed below the ticker if you like to get your comment or question noticed, or go ahead and use Super Chat, either or. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. You can send in your comment that way if you really wanted to get featured on the show, or you could use Super Chat if you really want to get it featured on the show. Again, either or works. It's up to you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this segment today. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care. Oh, and before I go, there is a football game tonight. And for all of you Jets fans out there, Aaron Rodgers is supposed to be suiting up for the first time. So good luck. Hopefully the same thing from last year doesn't happen. And enjoy football for today. But aside from that, everyone else, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.